All right, so welcome John, Jackie, and Laurie. It's an honor for Goodera to host all of you celebrating International Day of Education, representing your nonprofits, Beyond Vision Foundation, and Lower East Side Jewish Conservancy. And I am very happy to be able to ask you multiple questions, throw some light on the work that your nonprofit does, and learn ways on how can not just Goodera but corporate volunteers, organizations, other stakeholders support you wholeheartedly and all throughout the year beyond the education day. So, without further ado, my first question is to you, Jackie. Um, as someone who is an educator herself, I'd like to understand from you that why are we still talking about such a basic thing as literacy and the need for it in 21st century?
Where the world is right now, we need education and literacy. And I'm from Kenya originally. I've lived in Kenya. I was born here. And the difference between one person to the next is the literacy level. The chances that individuals get in life, like right here in Kenya, it totally depends on their literacy levels. The income that they get literally depends on the literacy level. And so in the 21st century, literacy is very important, and education is very important because it really just equals the income. Women need to be educated and to be literate because they make decisions at home, the nutrition decisions for their children, the economic decisions for their children, and literacy, according to me as an educator and a social changer, it's very important during this century. We need literate people, educated people. The world has changed into technology. You can't get into technology if you're not really educated and you don't have any education, or the literacy levels are very low. And so, yeah, literacy is very important in the 21st century.
Absolutely, and I totally understand where you're coming from, where you said that literacy, it is the only way that can get people out of poverty, especially minority groups such as women. So, Laurie, I'd like to understand from you on this, that how do you think history plays a role in that, and why do we need to conserve history, especially to educate more and more children, especially?
Oh, how can you not conserve history? So we don't make the same mistakes. So we learn about our past, especially when we give tours for children so they can identify with immigrants. Especially sometimes we have immigrant children on our tours and they come from a whole different immigrant situation than we're teaching them about the Jews that came here 100-something years ago. So maybe they can identify with it, maybe they can't. It's very important to learn history and know where we're coming from.
Absolutely, and of course, so we do not make mistakes, and definitely history teaches us a lot of lessons. And John, I'd like to learn from you that your nonprofit specifically works for a variety of causes in helping children, from feeding them to educating them. So why did you choose this holistic way of helping children, and where did that come from?
I believe helping people is something that is very, very important. I believe it's something that it comes from, well, if you read the Bible, it'll say that one of the things we do is to help the poor, help the widows, so on and so forth. And so my portion comes from the Bible. So if we think about helping people, I always identify it too. If you take one match, you strike it, you can light a forest fire. It's the same thing if we start to help people. If you reach out, one person can move a whole lot of stuff if you're willing to help others. And even if people would just take one other person alongside of them and help that one person, you've helped somebody move along further than they were. And so to me, we started very simply by feeding a few children. Now we feed 260 children a day, twice a day. We've fed over 3,200 families during the COVID time. We've got some property that we're raising food on right now that's feeding both a village, part of a village, and also part of the school. and it's not because of look how great I am, but like when we start to do stuff, we can do a lot. We're just willing to do our part and help others, and not consider only our own needs.
Absolutely. And I think all three of you who are in this call, all of you are very selfless in doing what you are doing, which is why a lot of people, they're able to eat food, they are educated, and kudos to all three of you to working so hard. And we are very, very, very honored to listen to you about your work, and hopefully this can spread spread word about the same. And on that note, I'd like to know a little bit more about Laurie, your nonprofit, and how exactly are you doing what you're doing?
Okay, we are and consider ourselves an educational and cultural nonprofit, and we want to highlight the history of the Jewish Lower East Side, which is America's most famous immigrant neighborhood. And we do that by giving walking tours. These tours bring us into synagogues that have been around, some since the mid to early 1800s. And we give a portion of the proceeds back of every tour that we give to the sites that we visit to help sustain the communities, because at the turn of the last century, there were over 500 synagogues in existence, and now we only have a fraction of that. So we want to share our history. We want people to know about it. We think that the best way for people to understand each other is to learn where each of us come from. And we do a lot of tours for children who are learning about immigration in school.
Awesome. And so I'd like to understand, since both Laurie and Jackie, you've worked with minorities and people who have faced the worst of the worst. So I would like to understand from you that from your experience, 6-7 years and more of experience, what is the difference between the education system and how the education percolates to students in developed versus underdeveloped countries?
Have a lot more advantages. So the school systems are better. So, students have a whole lot more advantage than they do in underdeveloped countries.
I agree with Laurie on this because I work with underprivileged children in a developing country. And I've had the privilege also to travel in a few countries in this world. And I've seen the difference in the education system. I've seen in the developed countries, government have highly invested in education, unlike our countries. In Kenya and other developing countries, the government doesn't really invest so much on education because their needs are stretched, And in working with very marginalized communities means that you can't get also quality teachers to get to them because the teachers don't have to go to marginalized communities to work there. The needs of children from very marginalized communities is totally different from privileged communities, even within the same country. Like, for example, in Kenya, the children that I work with, their needs are totally different. They can't start learning unless they know to get food. And so the demographics are totally different. And as much as the system is the same for the whole country, we have complained over and over to our government that they need to really consider the same. We have private schools here. We have schools that are really privileged in our country, that have better infrastructures. We have parents who can afford education here in Kenya, but also we have parents who cannot afford one exercise book to take their children to school. And so it's totally different, and working with the marginalized communities means more than education. It means, like what John said, that we need to feed the children. If we don't feed them, they cannot learn. We've had instances of children coming to school and they fall asleep immediately. Not because they didn't sleep at night, but because they're too weak to just to learn. And so they prefer to sleep because that's their coping mechanism. We've had parents, most of the parents that we work with are illiterate. And so it's totally different because when parents cannot translate the results of the child they cannot really support the child in their education. They have no voice at all. If they cannot afford to feed their children, they have no voice even to the government concerning their education of their children. And so the developed countries really have invested in their children's, in the population's education and the education systems. They've invested in infrastructures. I may not speak for the developed countries, of course, but of course they may not be the same like here. And here for the very marginalized communities, they need people who can go in and really just make a difference in their lives. We are still struggling economically as a country. And so the country may not be able to really invest a lot in education, but there are also privileged parts of the country that kids don't really struggle getting education. Kids don't struggle with technology. Whereas where we work and where we are running the program, we are still not yet there. We are still not yet there with technology. We are still not yet there with so many things, even with the library and such things. And so kids have no access to so many things that they need to perform well. And yet at the end of the primary school education or secondary school education, they have to compete with children from other backgrounds in the same country. They have to compete with kids who have computers. They have to compete with kids who have textbooks. In Kenya, mostly parents take care of the textbooks and the learning materials. If their mother cannot afford a pencil, and they have to compete with other kids from other privileged neighborhoods and families, really that's what we feel like it's unfair in most developed countries, Kenya being one of them. And we feel like, yes, we value education. Developing countries value academics because that's the only way out of poverty. And they still have to work very hard to get there. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie, for that. And I think only people like you, educators, who have actually seen these problems where parents cannot understand and translate the results of their children. That's the kind of things only an educator could bring in our eyes, because I never think that, okay, this is a problem that parents actually face. So thank you for bringing that up. And John, I'd like to understand from you on this that Jackie mentioned so many problems that developing countries are facing, and you happen to be in Washington, which is one of the most developed places. So I'd like to understand from your perspective also the difference in the education system of developing versus developed countries.
Well, when I think about our situation, I have two of my daughters right now presently going for master's degrees in colleges. They're very well educated. They were homeschooled, so we chose not to go the public school route, but they're homeschooled and they're doing very well. And I have three boys, and all three boys are in business for themselves. So we have that opportunities. We have great opportunities here to be able to be successful. I traveled to Nairobi. I traveled to Kenya itself as a whole, and I traveled around Kenya. And some of the things that I had happen was one tribe approached me, the Maasai tribe approached me and asked me if I would help them develop a school there. And the reason for it was very simple. They said that our teachers we have here can only teach what they know. So they're developing from their old ways of teaching, the old things that they know, and they're trying to teach into a culture that is way advanced beyond them. So they asked me if I'd bring in teachers, build a school. They were willing to give me lots of land to do this and to do all the work, but I'm one person. We see in Kenya, when you walk through Kenya, like I've told Jackie, you guys are like 1880s compared to us in our 2000 year cycle. I mean, we are way more advanced. You walk past a construction site, you don't hear anything electronic running. Everything is you hear a hammer and you hear a manual saw going. Someone's busy sawing away with a handsaw. You see people mixing mud by hand, and all this stuff happens from our new advances in culture and education. So education is extremely important, that even a country can keep up with another country just in today's time.
Absolutely, John. And I think this is the 10th time that a non-profit has told me themselves that Africa is so behind compared to the rest of the world, and there is so much work that needs to be done in terms of education, in terms of hunger, in terms of healthcare. and it's great that your nonprofit is doing this. And I'm just curious that already, since there's so much work to be done, the pandemic would have added to the stress of it. So I'd like to understand from both you and Laurie, John, that how was that process for you both, like your nonprofit, education in general, and how have you coped up with it after almost 2 years of it being there?
Well, with the COVID, Jackie called me to let me know that the government was shutting down the possibility for people to go to work, and so she alerted me that people will start to starve because most people there make very, very little money in the slums, and they all resort on going out and working for people outside the slum, and in that work, that little bit of money that they make now is threatened. And then the government came in, they shut the power off that was going through the slums and the water. So we provided, I should say Jackie, the school, we funded them and they provided water, and they still do. They provided food for 3,200 families for a couple months. We provide wash stands and signage for them how to wash their hands. And the people of the slums understood COVID to be a disease that was only for those who were rich. So we had to educate them. Jackie has taken the time to the school also to take children in this time when children's youth pregnancies were excelling. We were seeing increased way. She took the time to actually develop a mentorship program to start taking those youth into their care and begin to express to them how we avoid pregnancies, avoiding the drugs, avoiding the gangs. All these things were developed in this time frame. We've also fed families outside of the Sia slums in other areas of Africa too as well. So it's we raise funds for these purposes, but our primary purpose is like I said before. Right now we're working with that slum, that school, trying to develop that school because these people are they need education, they need it, Jackie would say we take the slum out of the children, so that they can attend a public school, because if they're identified as slum children, they won't be accepted. And so we need them to be able to be accepted in the school and to be able to grow within the school structure. And most of those students are now taking leading roles in their school. And oftentimes they'll point back to the mentorship program they have. They'll point back to the leadership of Jackie. And also we have children now that are coming out of college now, that we've provided scholarships for, and now they're wanting to come back and teach the school. So this is the whole emphasis, is to have this whole cycle of people going in, learning, becoming educated, and then become useful and functional in society in so many different ways.
Absolutely. And I think the moment you said that you have children who are coming back to teach, so that's when you really broke the vicious cycle, right? And now it's linear, and congratulations to both of you on doing that. A lot of non-profits unfortunately had to shut down because of lack of funding. So for any non-profit or shelter to just continue in these 2 years is itself a big thing. And for that, congratulations. And then to add to that, having students who are now teachers is just commendable. So congratulations to both of you. And Laurie, I'd love to know about your journey with it.
Well, our journey with the pandemic has been rough. However, like you said, we're happy that we're still around. So many organizations did not make it. And we almost were one of the casualties as well. Obviously, we couldn't be out there giving walking tours. We couldn't be bringing people into the synagogues. So we turned to Zoom like the rest of the world, and that sustained us. We started to do educational book talks. Authors would talk about their books. We would have people talk about some of the different neighborhoods that we normally do walking tours about. Many of our tour guides would talk about the history of different neighborhoods, and that kept us going.
Wow, I think both of your experiences, like from what we heard from John and what we heard from Laurie, I think it becomes very, very clear that society plays a very, very critical role in our lives. And the pandemic I would say that the term social distancing was in a way wrong, because a pandemic caused physical distancing, but it made us socially more close. It brought us closer, and through Zoom, through other platforms as well, I think all across the world, different countries could understand the plight of people from different parts of the world, because everyone was facing the same issue. Everyone was going through the same pandemic that was deadly for every single person equally. And as I've laid emphasis on this thing that society plays a very critical role, I would like to understand from both of you, Laurie, John, I think all three of you, Jackie as well, because here, when we talk about non-profit organization, a very crucial role is played by the volunteers as well. The people who come with the right intent at their heart to support an organization, a cause, and further help them further their cause. So I would like to understand from all three of you that how does your nonprofit interact with these these volunteers, and what are the different things that someone like us who are sitting in a distant place can come up virtually and contribute some of their time, some of their efforts, or however they can contribute. So just trying to understand your complete volunteering ecosystem.
Okay, for myself, most of mine is the foundation set up for people to send money into it. All the money that comes into my foundation goes back out for the purposes of educating children and for providing for the COVID fund. And also, we're in the process right now of buying the school that we've rented for so long. And so we're buying that, and it's all off a donation. Myself, I'm unpaid, as was Jackie's unpaid as part of our foundation. And she's worked tirelessly for years to be doing this work. And so we'd love to produce a paid role for her, because she's extremely talented in what she does and has a lot of education behind her for her purpose, and is very driven. And so it's important for us to keep developing her and the school. And I think that the school, in the end, we have that. And what it'll be in the end, it's going to be an education center for children. In the evenings, it can be an education center for adults, and also a trade school center for the younger people. And it can also be a medical center for people on the weekends, in an area where these people are like the rats of the city. They're not welcome. They're not wanted. They're not culturally accepted. And we need to. This is a base of population that has a lot of value and a lot of use, and we need to help them to be able to be a part and useful part of society. They're ones who have lost hope, and the hope is a critical part in what these ones need today.
I think that's a great vision, John, and I would love to see that vision coming true. And I think that would give every one of us a great sense of satisfaction that we could in some or the other way, we could be a part of that journey. And Jackie, I think with that, I would like to understand from you as well that how has been your journey of volunteering been so far, and how is your organization and you are interacting with your current volunteers?
Thank you very much. When I started the organization, I was just a dreamer. I had no backup, and I volunteered my way to see the change that I wanted to see. All along, I've worked with volunteers, and even with the current team that we have, we cannot really say that they are paid, because we are still not there in terms of what they are paid, what they're supposed to be paid right now. And so I always interact with them as volunteers. When working with volunteers, I think the best thing, first of all, is for them to understand your vision, to understand your heart and your vision. and to see where you are taking the organization and why you're in that community. I've interacted with so many volunteers, and John mentioned the mentorship program. We run the mentorship program with volunteers. We have people in Nairobi who want to mentor children. We have people, different professions who really want to come and mentor children and talk to the children about different topics. We are not professionals in everything. We see a need in the community and we provide a solution to the same. And we bring about volunteers to help us with our work. Let me give an example. During the COVID situation, when it started, of course, many schools were shut, and many gatherings or meetings were shut. And people, we were not meant to meet physically. And I mentioned that because of the demographics of where we work with, we don't have the privilege of technology. And so when other kids or other organizations went virtual and took advantage of Zoom, we really didn't have as much technology to do the same. But also, we couldn't leave the children to go home and not be hungry. And we continued with the mentorship programs, and the police came. And they said their work is to follow the directive of the president, and you're not supposed to have meetings. And I went to the police station and I spoke to the person in charge. And I just talked to them and I introduced myself, and I told them, this is what I do in this community. And I told him, you also work in this community. And if I let these children go home hungry, or if we give them all that time to be out there, you as a police will shoot them, because they'll have to go and fend for themselves. If they're hungry, they'll have to go get food one way or another, even if it means stealing. And I told him, what will you do as a police? If they are caught someone stealing, what do you do with kids from the slum? Most likely you bring them down, right? And we spoke, and I told him, we have to continue with this. And he allowed us to go on with our programs. And he turned out to be one of the volunteers of the organization with the mission. Not just him, the local administration, like the village elders, the other volunteers of the program. As we speak right now, someone just called me, he's an elder, and he had suggested that we have what you call like a chief baraza, which is a meeting, a community meeting with the local administration, to really just talk to the community about what we do in the community, and to have the community know exactly what you're doing in the community. And so having when volunteers or when individuals know what you're doing, they know the authenticity of what you're doing and of your heart, they will join in. They will join in and they will support financially, like John, they'll join in and give their time, and they'll give their resources. And as we speak, there was a Facebook group. Someone said they have potatoes and they like to give to a children's home or an institution. And I saw names, but I saw people writing there, beyond the vision, beyond the vision, beyond the vision. And there's some people I didn't even know. Some of them I didn't know. And they said, this organization feeds children every day. Give them the potatoes. And as it is, we're supposed to go and pick like 2 sacks of potatoes, which is like 180 kilos of potatoes this week. And so volunteer people are there.
Wow, that was such a heartwarming story, such a moving, such an inspiring story that you just mentioned. And here I would like to tell both the non-profit organizations that we are connecting with here, Beyond the Vision and Lower East Conservancy, that it's not about, like Laurie said, that we are a small organization. I believe that you have an immense power, an immense responsibility with on your shoulders, because you are serving to the people, and it's not about how many people you are serving. Even if you're creating an impact in the life of a single person, I think that's a great thing to do. And the sense of pleasure that you would be achieving on a day-to-day basis, I think that is something incredible, and that is incomparable to any other job, any other organization, big or small. So I think size is just a word here and nothing else. And Laurie, here I'd like to ask you as well about how do you interact with your volunteers, because volunteers play a very, very crucial role, and no founder, no CEO can alone take the initiative and make their aspirations true without volunteers. I think each and every non-profit organizations need people with the right intent at their heart. So I would like to understand from you as well that what are the different things, what are the different ways that you're connecting with your volunteers for, and how someone like us who has a willingness to support your cause come up and support it.
Well, first of all, let me say we appreciate that you guys are willing to support our cause at Goodera, because that means a lot, again, especially for such a small nonprofit as us. I know you said size doesn't matter, but we are very tiny. I am the only salaried employee. Our tour guides are not volunteer docents. They are paid and trained tour guides. So where we get our volunteers are things that you wouldn't think of. Someone helping us with social media to get the word out about our tours, or someone to perhaps help us with grant writing because we need grant money. We do not make enough money on our tours to sustain our lifestyle, so to speak. We could help with marketing. This is the things that we need volunteers to do. And quite honestly, we don't have enough volunteers and would love for your help to get more. Anything that we can do to get the word out, to help educate people about the history of the Lower East Side, you know, such an iconic neighborhood, that's what we're trying to do.
I think we will try to help you out whenever and however possible. At least this is something that will get covered with this interview itself. So this is the sole purpose of this campaign, to put a word out for all the non-profits who are doing such amazing job in their geographies, be it small or big. We do not specifically go on the size of an organization. We just try to gauge the impact that they're creating and the work that they're doing. And I think we have a huge network of corporate volunteers who are absolutely skilled volunteers. And we have access to corporate teams as well, who can come up and create something for you and maybe volunteer for you virtually itself. And you can definitely get something relevant out of that. So I think Suprerna, my colleague here, would be a better person to throw some light on that. We will quickly come on to that. Maybe we can discuss this after this interview call. And so I think those were all the questions from our end. If there is anything that any one of you would like to share, would like to speak about, please feel free.
I'm the Director of Operations for the Lower East Side Jewish Conservancy. We're an organization that was created in 1998 to share the history and culture of the historic Jewish Lower East Side. And we consider ourselves an educational organization in that we give tours, walking tours that visit sacred synagogue sites. During the turn of the last century, the Lower East Side was the most populated, densely populated place on earth, taking away that honor from Bombay and Calcutta, India. There were 980 people per acre, and they lived in horrible conditions. And this is so many things came out of this history, social reform, music, the beginnings of Broadway theater came out of the Jewish Yiddish Rialto. There's so much that came out of this that we are trying to share this through our educational tours. especially with children who are learning about immigration. And we're proud to say that we've hosted tens of thousands of visitors since our inception of all ages and faiths.
Great. Thank you so much, Laurie. And so before ending this amazing conversation, I think there were some great insights that all three of you shared about your work. And seriously, you all three of you are doing some amazing work, and we would love to see your aspirations coming into reality, as I said before as well. But before ending this amazing conversation, I would like to ask each one of you to share a short message for all those potential volunteers who would be watching this video about how their bare minimum effort can create such a huge impact in the lives of the people that you're serving, and obviously in the operations of your non-profit organization as well. So just a small message, maybe telling them that yes, exactly how their bare minimum effort can create such a huge impact. So I'll go in the order as I see you all in my screen. So first of all, John, I think you can go ahead first.
In our Beyond Vision Foundation, volunteers, obviously we are basically, I'm basically collect donations, but on the same token, as we're looking ahead for our future growth, we would be looking for doctors who may be interested in coming in for medical help. We'd be looking for teachers who are interested in teaching tech school stuff, and even those who are able to teach adults. The world in Tasia slums as a whole needs a lot of good education in there to help people to learn. In the aspect of the school, we want to rebuild the school, and we want to make it better for the sake of the children and for more safety and so forth, and give the children some place to actually play there. So we'd be looking to try to grow that to pay for more of that as we go along. But of all the volunteers we've had, I mean, they've been phenomenal as far as helping us out to this point. In fact, where we're at today is not because of my effort, but because of the efforts of so many people already. So I would want to thank them and also encourage Jackie. She's been the one who has been the actual head for all of this going on over there.
We need volunteers, especially in putting up proper systems in place, like the website, like templates, like the putting templates and fundraising ideas of anyone to help with fundraising and such things. I've been a volunteer for a very long time. The first time I volunteered, I was 19. And when I was 19 years old, I took a boy to hospital who had, I can't remember the name, but it's the way interstates get out, interstates when they get out of the system, what is it called? Yeah, anyway, and I was very young, and I took that boy to the hospital. The mom was a drunkard. He couldn't wear pants properly, and I realized that it's free to get surgery for kids under 5 years old, and I did that, and the boy's life changed. And so the little that I did, that's what gave me confidence to do what I'm doing right now. I was a volunteer. I was very young, but I didn't have much skill. Sometimes we question ourselves whether we have time or the skill. And so every volunteer who might be watching this, give your time, give your skill, give whatever you can. It doesn't have to be finances, and that totally changes a community somewhere, a child somewhere, a woman somewhere, a man somewhere. Don't underestimate yourself, don't underestimate our needs. Go ahead and just volunteer and give back.